The first time I saw her, she was wiping down a counter that was already clean. Late afternoon light slipped through the café window, catching the strands of silver in her hair. She wasn't the kind of woman who looked up when someone walked in, not because she was unfriendly, but because she didn't expect anything new to happen. I didn't either. I came most days around 4, after classes, when the café was half empty and smelled like vanilla syrup and burned espresso. She always wore simple earrings, always tied her hair the same way, and always smiled in that tired, polite way that didn't reach her eyes. "Your usual?" she'd ask. I'd nod. "Yeah. Thanks." That was the routine, her wiping a counter that didn't need it, me pretending to check my phone while I waited. Nothing about it was romantic. It was just the kind of quiet you start to depend on when the rest of your life feels loud and pointless. Sometimes she'd talk about small things. The weather, the broken espresso machine, how students always left their laptops plugged in too long. Once, she joked about my worn-out backpack, said it looked like it had survived a war. I laughed, even though she was right. She started remembering little things, that I didn't take sugar, that I liked the window seat near the corner. One day, when the rain was tapping hard against the glass, she slid my cup toward me and said, "You look tired." I said, "You too." She smiled, a real one this time, small, but enough to make my chest feel strange. I didn't know her story. Just bits of it. She wore a ring, but I never saw her check her phone, never saw her rush to leave. Once, she came in late with her hair still damp, eyes red like she'd been crying but too proud to show it. She still took everyone's orders. Still wiped down that counter. There was a lipstick stain on her thumb once, deep red, and she tried to scrub it off with a napkin. I don't know why I noticed, but I did. And I kept noticing. The way her hands trembled when she poured coffee. The quiet way she stood by the sink when everyone else left. The way she avoided looking at her reflection in the glass door. I'd find myself thinking about her when I shouldn't, in class, walking home, brushing my teeth. Not like a crush. More like curiosity that wouldn't let go. Maybe because she looked like someone who used to believe in things. Last week, I almost asked her something. She was closing up early. The lights were half off, her hair loose, her apron folded over her arm. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but she glanced at me and said quietly, "You should get going before it rains harder." I nodded, left my cup half full. When I got home, I found a message on my phone from her number. I hadn't even realized she had it. "Can you come by tomorrow? There's something I need to tell you." No greeting. No name. Just that. I stared at the message for a long time, the rain outside making small rivers on the glass. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to know the truth, or if I'd already guessed it. I went back the next morning, earlier than usual. The café was empty except for her, hair tied loosely, sleeves rolled up, sunlight slanting across her face like it couldn't decide whether to touch her or not. She looked up when I came in. "You came." Her voice was softer than I remembered. "I got your message," I said, holding my phone like proof. "You said you needed to tell me something." She hesitated, then motioned to the seat near the counter. "Sit." So I did. For a moment, all I could hear was the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of her setting a cup in front of me, chamomile tea instead of coffee. "I didn't text you by mistake," she said finally. "I just needed someone to talk to. Someone who doesn't already know the whole story." I didn't know what story she meant, but I nodded anyway. She smiled faintly. That's the thing about small towns, everyone knows, or thinks they do. Her fingers tapped lightly against her cup. The ring was gone. "My husband left," she said. 2 months ago. She said it like she'd already practiced saying it, measured, polite, like she didn't expect sympathy. I wanted to ask why, but she didn't look like she wanted questions. She took a slow breath. "He said he fell out of love. I guess that happens." Her eyes flicked toward me, like she was checking if I believed her. I didn't answer. I just looked down at the steam curling from my cup, pretending to study it. We sat there a long time, neither of us saying much. She reached for the sugar jar, then pulled her hand back like she'd forgotten what she was doing. "You're too young for this kind of conversation," she murmured. "I don't think that matters," I said quietly. That made her laugh, the kind of laugh that sounds like it's trying to hide something. "Everything matters at my age," she said. "Even a conversation." I didn't know what to say, so I folded the napkin in front of me, over and over, until it was a tight little square. She noticed, smiled again. "You do that when you're nervous." I didn't realize I was. "You are," she said. "So am I." There was a silence, long, comfortable, and dangerous all at once. She leaned forward a little, elbows on the counter. "You remind me of my son," she said softly. "He's your age. Used to come here after school too. He moved to Karachi last year." Something about the way she said "remind me" made my chest tighten. Like she was saying don't become another person who leaves. I wanted to tell her I wouldn't. But that would have been a lie, or a promise I had no right to make. She stood up after a while, walked to the window, and looked outside. "It's going to rain again," she said. "It always does when I start talking about him." I joined her there, close enough to see our reflections blurred together in the glass. Her hand brushed mine when she reached to pull the blinds. Neither of us moved away. It was just a second, skin against skin, a shared breath, but it stayed. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. It rained again that week. The kind of rain that turns streets into mirrors. I stopped by the café later than usual. The lights were low, chairs half-stacked. She was closing up, sleeves rolled past her elbows, humming something faintly under her breath. When she saw me, she didn't smile right away. "You shouldn't be here this late," she said, voice quiet but not unkind. "I couldn't sleep." She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Maybe she hadn't been sleeping either. I offered to help her close up. She didn't answer, just handed me a rag. That was her way of saying yes. We moved around each other silently, wiping tables, flipping chairs. The only sound was the soft scrape of wood, the hum of the fridge, and the rain pressing against the glass. At one point, she dropped a spoon. I bent down to pick it up at the same time she did. Our hands brushed. She froze. Her eyes lifted to mine, startled. Then something, a flicker, maybe fear, maybe something else, crossed her face. She stepped back. "Don't," she said. Not harshly. "Just tired." "I wasn't, I know." She exhaled, rubbed her temple. "You don't have to explain." But I wanted to. Or maybe I just wanted her to stop looking at me like that. Like I was a line she'd already crossed in her mind but couldn't let herself admit. A man walked in right then, maybe a regular, maybe someone new. Mid-30s, wearing a wet jacket and that look people wear when they've walked into something private. "Didn't realize you were still open," he said. She straightened immediately. "We're not." "Sorry." He left, but the silence he dragged in stayed. Her voice was different after that. Brisk. Professional. "Can you lock up the back door when you go?" I wanted to say something, anything, to bring back the version of her from earlier, the one who let her hand linger near mine. But she was already turning away, folding her apron like it mattered more than the air between us. When I finally spoke, it came out too soft. "You're not wearing the ring anymore." She paused, fingers still. "Does it matter?" "It does to me." She turned then, eyes sharp and sad all at once. "You think this means something?" I didn't know how to answer. Her gaze held mine for too long. "You're a good kid," she said, the word kid slicing through the quiet. "Don't make this harder than it already is." I almost left. Hand on the door, throat dry. But something made me look back. She was still there behind the counter, watching the rain instead of me. Her hand brushed the empty spot on her finger like she missed the weight of it. Then, so soft I almost didn't hear it, she said, "You forgot your tea." I turned back, walked toward her. Our fingers met around the warm cup. Neither of us let go. For a second, the whole room seemed to hold its breath. If I'd leaned just an inch closer, if she hadn't stepped back, maybe everything would have changed right there. But she did. And the space between us felt wider than ever. It had been days since that night. I tried not to go back. Tried walking past the cafe without looking in. Tried convincing myself that what I felt wasn't what it looked like. But she texted again. "We need to talk. Just a few minutes." So I went. She was outside this time, sitting on the low bench by the side of the cafe, coat draped over her shoulders, a paper cup in her hands. The streetlight above flickered, a dull pulse that made the air feel heavier. "You came," she said, like she hadn't expected me to. I said I would. For a while neither of us spoke. The sound of passing cars filled the silence. The rain from earlier had turned into mist, softening everything it touched. She sipped her coffee, winced. "Cold. Then why are you still drinking it? It gives me something to hold." I almost said me too, but I didn't. She looked tired, not the kind sleep could fix, but the kind that settles behind your eyes when you've been pretending too long. "Did someone say something?" I asked. Her brow furrowed slightly. "Why? You just seem different." She smiled without looking at me. "Someone saw us the other night. The man who walked in. He's a friend of my husband's." That name, husband, hung between us like smoke. "I told him you were just helping me close up," she said, voice low. He laughed. "Said that's how things always start." I stared at the ground, at the small pool of water collecting near her shoes. "And what did you say?" She hesitated, then, barely above a whisper. "Nothing." That hurt more than I wanted it to. A car passed, its headlights sweeping across us. For a second, her face was all light, then gone again. "I don't want to make things complicated," she said finally. "You already did," I said before I could stop myself. She turned toward me, slow, careful. "What do you think this is?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "But it's not nothing." Her lips parted like she was going to answer, then closed again. "Do you think I'm cruel?" she asked quietly. "No, then why do you look at me like that?" "Because you make me forget how young I am. Because I think about you when I shouldn't. Because every time you smile, I wonder who you used to be before you stopped being loved." But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I said, "I don't know how to stop." She exhaled, a shaky sound. "You're making this hard." Maybe it already was. A long silence followed. She brushed a strand of hair from her face, fingers trembling. Then she looked at me, really looked. For the first time, she didn't seem older. Just human. "Tell me something," she said. "If this were someone else, would you judge them?" I thought about it, swallowed hard. "Maybe not." She nodded slowly, as if that was both an answer and a confession. Then, softer, almost to herself. "So what do we do now?" Her voice broke on the last word, and before I could answer, she stood. The mist had turned into rain again, thin and cold. She didn't look back when she walked away. And I sat there, wondering if the question she asked was ever meant to be answered at all. She stopped texting. At first, I told myself it was nothing, people get busy, days slip by. But when I walked past the cafe and saw someone else behind the counter, I knew. She was gone. The new girl said she'd taken some time off. No explanation, just a shrug. I tried asking when she'd be back. "A week? Maybe 2. It came out like a guess. For days, I found myself walking the same route anyway. Past the same storefronts, same window, same chair in the corner that still felt warm in memory. It was strange, the world looked the same, but it all felt rearranged. The truth came quietly, through someone else's words. A classmate of mine, who'd worked part-time at the cafe last summer, said she'd run into her at the hospital. "Visiting someone," she'd said. "Her son, I think. Something about a car accident last month." I felt something shift inside me, guilt, maybe. or the ache of realizing how small my part in her story actually was. I thought about the way she used to pause mid-sentence, the moments when her phone buzzed and she'd turn it over without checking. The way she said, "my son," like the words were fragile glass. And I realized she hadn't been pulling away from me. She'd been holding something else together. That night, I wrote a message I never sent. "I didn't come for coffee. I came because you made silence feel safe." Then I deleted it. Typed again. Deleted that too. What could I even say? "I miss you" felt too selfish. "I understand" would have been a lie. I kept the phone screen lit until it dimmed on its own, like it was deciding for me. Weeks passed. The cafe felt smaller without her. The new girl forgot my usual order. The window seat stayed empty. One evening, just as I was leaving, I noticed a folded receipt tucked under the sugar jar, her handwriting on the back. "Some things end quietly. Don't mistake that for peace." No signature. No date. Just that one line, in her small, careful script. I read it over and over, trying to hear her voice inside it. Maybe that was her way of saying goodbye. Or maybe it was something else, a pause before the next breath. I walked home in the drizzle, coat collar turned up, the paper softening in my hand. It wasn't heartbreak. Not exactly. It felt more like standing in a room after the music stops, waiting for someone to say you can go now. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. She came back in late autumn. I saw her before she saw me, standing outside the cafe, hands tucked into her coat, looking through the glass like she wasn't sure she was allowed in. The place hadn't changed much. New flowers on the counter, same uneven hum from the coffee machine. But she looked different. Thinner. Quieter. Like she'd been somewhere heavy and left parts of herself there. When she finally noticed me, her lips parted in a small, uncertain smile. "I thought you moved on," she said. I tried. It came out honest, not dramatic. Just a truth placed gently on the table between us. We didn't sit inside. She asked if I wanted to walk. So we did, down the narrow street where the trees had started shedding. Leaves gathered in small piles along the curb. She kept glancing at them like she wanted to step around every one. "I shouldn't have disappeared like that," she said after a while. "You had reasons." Her hand brushed against her pocket. "My son's been recovering. It's slow. Some days good, some not." I nodded. The word son hit differently this time. No jealousy, just quiet understanding. "I thought about messaging you," she said. "But it felt unfair." "To who?" She stopped walking, looked at me. "To you. You're young. You should be building something, not standing still in someone else's story." I wanted to tell her it wasn't like that. That I wasn't standing still. I was learning to feel things that didn't have easy names. But all I managed was, "I didn't come here for a story." That made her laugh softly, though her eyes stayed wet. We sat on a bench outside the park, the one by the bakery that closed too early. The air smelled like rain that hadn't started yet. "I kept that note," I said. "The one you left?" She looked surprised. "Why?" "Because it didn't sound like goodbye." Her shoulders dropped a little, as if the weight of that sentence reached her bones. She turned toward me, searching my face for something I didn't know I had. "You don't know how dangerous you are," she said quietly. "You make people want to be seen." I smiled, but it hurt. "You already were." We just sat there then, two people who had almost become something and knew they shouldn't. The wind picked up. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, then looked at me one last time. "I'm going to stay," she said. "But not like before." "I know." We both knew what that meant: boundaries, distance, a quieter version of whatever this was. Still, before she stood, she reached out and brushed her hand lightly against mine. No promises. No goodbye. Just that, a touch steady and real. "Okay?" she whispered. "Okay." And it was enough.